Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So if you're here today, my assumption is that if you're in one way or the other connected to this global movement to improve the human condition, the SDGs. And if you're talking about global scale impact, it's very hard to not consider the role of governments in that process. They are, after all, the large-scale agent of impact out there. So in the next 15 minutes, I want to talk a bit about the role that governments play in delivering basic services to billions of people. Unfortunately, I also want to talk about how deeply they're failing at that mandate. And I want to share an idea that I think can transform governments into the large-scale engine of impact that we need them to be today. So governments around the world deliver about $5 trillion worth of public services on an annual basis. That cuts across education, health, water, electricity, employment services, everything you might need if you're in a marginalized community to have a pathway to prosperity. Unfortunately, most often, these services fail to deliver that promised impact. So today I'm going to focus on that issue for the case of education, but everything I'll tell you is true for every other area of service delivery that you can think about. So in the last 10 years, education spending in low and middle income countries has more than doubled, resulting in the 30% increase in per capita spending for students. Unfortunately, the outcomes have not followed. Today, still 70% of children of the age of 10 can still not read a simple text or understand a simple text. Only 1 in 3 students will graduate secondary school. So in many ways, more spending has not meant more outcomes. That's about 300 million students and children stalled at the gates because education systems are failing. So we've spent the last 10 years at Instiglio really trying to understand what's behind this challenge. Why is there almost a zero correlation between more spending and more outcomes in public services? And what we found is that by walking the hallways of government, going to implementation side, working side by side with policy teams, the biggest failure is in implementation. It's not about the what of policy, it's about the how. How are we getting curriculums to hundreds of thousands of schools out there? How getting teachers to teach them the right level of quality? I'll give you 3 shocking statistics about the education system that illustrates this point. First, a survey found that 80% of the education spending is leaked before even getting to the classroom in some countries. So the spending we think we are spending is actually not being spent on actual education. When that funding gets into the classroom, a survey of 7 African countries, including Kenya, Nigeria, found that 44% of the time, teachers are not in the classroom. When they are in the classroom, and this is the worst of all statistics, a survey found that grade 4 teachers, a third of them, did not have the competencies to themselves pass the 4th grade test. So they were absolutely not prepared, of course, to impart knowledge to students. Now, I wish this was the whole iceberg, but it's just the tip of it. In unpacking delivery systems in the last 10 years, we found dozens of other failures, from books not being delivered on time to utilities not being paid, and the list goes on. Now, I want to unpack what I call the delivery black box for you, to give us a sense of what's behind delivering what seems to be a simple process of teaching kids alphabets in the classroom at nationwide scale. This is the case of the Ministry of Education in Peru. They have to perfectly manage 92 different activities, processes in symphony to deliver education in 94,000 schools to 6 million children on a yearly basis. This means an incredible amount of coordination, of quality management, of perfect sequencing for that education experience to be what it needs to be. Now, to manage performance through such a complex system that involves a network of hundreds of thousands of individuals from administrators to teachers, you'd need an equally sophisticated performance management system that gives you insight on what's working, what's not, whether we're on track or not, and allows you to course correct and motivate and incentivize this whole network to work as hard as possible for the children in the classroom. Where are governments with respect to that vision? Unfortunately, 1 in 3 governments out there don't even measure student learning outcomes, and let alone measuring the delivery process, let alone having mechanisms to incentivize performance. So governments are mostly delivering like a shot in the dark. At this rate, a 2017 study from Harvard University estimated that by the end of this century, 91 out of 102 governments will not have the capabilities to deliver basic services well enough to be impactful. Think about this for a second. It means in our lifetime, the main engine of impact that we're relying on to deliver the SDGs will just not be ready. It's really hard to avoid this problem. It's really hard to go around it. It's really hard to not confront it if you're serious about large-scale impact. Now, the reason why this persists over time is not that we don't have the technology, the know-how of how to manage services at scale. It's actually an accountability failure. Politicians in office, civil servants, do not face consequences when public services fail our children. Now, in addition to trying to understand this issue in the last 10 years, we've tried to figure out how to make some progress on it. We've tried and tested different types of interventions, working with government teams. And today I want to focus on one solution, which is not a panacea, but I think belongs to the solution set, which is both efficient, scalable, and also incredibly powerful and transformative for the quality of public services. It's called results-based financing. Now, you may have heard of this applied to specific programs, but today I want to talk about it as a core concept of public financial management. Usually, governments would distribute funding to school districts based on a series of inputs that are purchased. How many teachers' salaries you're paying, how many books you're purchasing, how many school meals you're purchasing. But we know from the previous slides that inputs don't mean outcomes. So results-based financing asks a simple question. What would happen if instead we were to dedicate part of the school district's budget to trigger that based on the outcomes that we see out of its performance? Increased teacher attendance, increased learning outcomes in school. Well, we hypothesize that we might see renewed attention to certain outcomes and measurement being more part of the day-to-day of these school districts. We hypothesize that these school administrators and teachers might exercise greater effort to maximize the learning experience of students in the classroom. We also know that by tying funding to results as opposed to inputs and activities, we can provide certain level of flexibility to these frontline teams to really figure out how to teach kids. In essence, what we're really proposing is to create a performance environment, a performance culture where governments can really focus on the ultimate user and serve them as best as they can. I want to run you through an experiment of applying this concept in the Ministry of Education in Peru. So the ministry set aside $45 million of its budget on an annual basis to trigger downwards to regional directorates and local management units, not based on inputs being purchased, but based on a series of KPIs and outcome indicators. These included learning material being delivered on time, utilities being paid on time so that electricity and water is in school, appropriate attendance of teachers, as well as, of course, learning outcomes improving over time. In a period of 3 years, previously stagnating learning outcomes started increasing by 10 to 17%, and the ministry found this to be the most cost-effective intervention in improving learning outcomes that they've tried so far. This promise has translated to other sectors like delivering water to the residents of Sierra Leone, or enabling job seekers to get jobs in Nepal, or improving maternal and child health in Rwanda. This experiment in Rwanda, the World Bank designed an experiment where they attributed to results-based financing the improvement of 23 to 132% of maternal and child health outcomes. Now think about this for a second. No more resources, no different capabilities, just a tweak in the way we're deploying finance can cause a leap in performance in the public services. Now, there are 3 lessons we're taking forward with us in this journey. First, results-based financing has over and over, not just through our experience, but through multiple partners and organizations that have tried this, demonstrated that it can leap performance in public services, can impact and unleash the full impact potential of governments. And not only does it leap performance in terms of the outcomes we see, but it also implants a performance culture that can carry through in governments. Second, and unfortunately, as great as this promising idea is, it hasn't taken off as it should have. And we've recognized that there's some significant barriers that we're facing that anchors the current status quo in this low performance equilibrium. For example, there are some huge political disincentives to expanding this. Results-based financing proposes to measure delivery performance, to make that transparent, to make failures transparent. This is something that many politicians don't want to take on. Second, the administrative systems of governments are often not ready to expand such practice. The data systems are not present, the information systems are not dated. How do we measure performance without those? So significant redesign of the financial and measurement systems of governments are required to enable such a world. The third silver lining is that, and this is a surprising finding that we didn't anticipate at the beginning of this journey, is that for the last 10 years, we've come across a hugely underestimated but growing community of change makers within the civil service who are purpose-driven, who want to partner with us on this kind of journeys, but who are often super isolated and under-resourced and underpowered. But if we find a way to connect this community and engage in this journey of evolution of government, we have a chance to break these barriers. Now, to take advantage of the promise of results-based financing and really unleash the full impact potential of governments across hundreds of them, we're going to need three things. First, we need more resources to go towards investing in government systems. This is a time to step towards government, not away from government. Unfortunately, today, most donors and philanthropy has this as a last item on their funding list to prioritize. So we would hope that can change, and unless we really make progress on this issue, we can't really think of global impact at scale. Second, we would want to see more scale partners. We would want to see organizations like the World Bank, like the IDB, like the IMF, who are using these broken delivery systems on a yearly basis to channel billions of dollars of funds to really bring this topic at the center of the table. However inconvenient it may be to talk about this, let's remember that it's even more inconvenient for the 300 million children out there who are not learning for us to not talk about it. So we expect more moral leadership from these large-scale influential actors to highlight the delivery failures and start working on it. And finally, we would hope that we can work towards some new minimum standards of public financial management in today's age of technology and know-how and expertise. It is frankly unacceptable, morally unacceptable, that today governments are channeling trillions of dollars for systems without having the basic management systems to tell us what the social bottom line is and how to measure and incentivize greater bottom lines. This journey is not going to be easy, but if we want to change the world, we need to start by redesigning our governments to be more impactful. We know this is possible within our lifetime. We think it's worthy to pursue, and I hope you can join us in this mission. Thank you.